Spring has now begun, and we as Jews are now approaching the holiday of Passover. But why keep Passover? What is the importance of eating matzah, doing the Seder, doing all the interesting mitzvot that come with the holiday of Passover? Why do it every single year? The Jews of Iraq tell a very interesting story. In a far-off kingdom, they had a very unique custom. When the old king died, they had a bird, a large bird called the bird of good fortune. And that bird would be released, and on whoever's head that bird landed, he would become the king, no matter who it was, man, woman, free person, or slave. Well, one year the king died, and they released the bird of good fortune. In that particular time, it landed on the head of a slave. That slave immediately became the king. And this particular person became a very benevolent king, kind to all people, giving and charitable, generous to all the people of his kingdom. And he had a very unique custom. This king, who was once a slave, had his ministers build right next to the nice palace an old shack, kind of like a sukkah. And every once in a while, the new king would go into that shack, spend time in there, spend the night at times. And the ministers finally asked him, "Why do you go into this shack with just a bare bed and a dresser, the bare necessities? Why not stay in this beautiful palace with all the luxuries you could ever want?" And the king reminded his ministers and told them that he goes in that shack often to remind himself where he came from, that he was once a slave. And he went in there to remind himself that he knew what it was like to be a slave, to go without, to be considered not worthy. So he now, as king, would treat all people equal, that he would never forget where he came from, and he would continue to be a kind and benevolent and charitable king. So it is with us as Jews. We have the holiday of Passover to remind us once a year that we too were once slaves in the land of Egypt. The most repeated commandment in the Torah, to treat the stranger fairly, to never oppress the stranger, because we know what it was like, better than any people on earth, to be oppressed. Let us use Passover as a reminder of the freedom, thank God, we have today, but as a reminder to do good for others, because we know what it's like to be slaves, to be oppressed. And happy early Passover as we approach the beautiful holiday of Pesach. Shabbat Shalom.